Martha Jones had always been the kind of woman who moved through life quietly, as if she didn't want to take up too much space. Every morning, before the Houston sun had even broken the horizon, she tied her hair into a neat bun, slipped into her faded gray uniform, and caught the early bus to the Reed mansion. The ride was long, but Martha didn't mind. It gave her a few minutes to breathe before the world started demanding again. Inside the mansion, wealth gleamed in every corner, marble floors that shone like water, chandeliers brighter than daylight, and walls covered in paintings that cost more than her entire apartment. Her boss, Lucas Reed, liked to say that everything in his house reflected excellence. Unfortunately, that also meant he expected perfection from everyone around him, including Martha. Lucas was the kind of man who didn't just walk into a room, he owned it. Expensive suit, perfect hair, that confident smile that could charm a client and cut an employee in the same breath. He didn't notice the small kindnesses. The coffee Martha kept warm for him, the lunch she saved for his overworked assistant. What he noticed were mistakes, fingerprints, and people who didn't fit the flawless image he'd built around himself. Most days, Martha kept her head down. She mopped, polished, dusted, and smiled when spoken to. But inside, she carried a quiet strength, a hope she refused to let go of. That hope had a name: Ryan, her 19-year-old son, a college student majoring in business and computer science. Every paycheck Martha earned went straight to his tuition. Every blister on her hands a silent promise that he would never have to live the way she did. At night, in their small apartment on the east side of Houston, Martha would wait for Ryan to come home from classes. They'd share leftover pasta, talk about his projects, and laugh about how tired they both were. Sometimes the lights flickered when the bills fell behind, but Ryan always found a way to make his mom smile. "It won't be like this forever, Mom," he'd say. And she believed him, because believing in him was what kept her going. But life has a strange way of testing faith. For Martha, that test arrived on a morning that looked just like any other, the day a simple accident would turn her quiet world upside down. It happened in the middle of a Tuesday rush. The housekeeper had called in sick, the gardeners were late, and Lucas was pacing through the hallway on a phone call, barking orders about a new real estate deal. Martha, trying to hurry before he noticed the unpolished floor, accidentally brushed against a table. The crystal vase, a gift Lucas had bragged about buying in New York, wobbled once, then crashed to the ground. The silence that followed was deafening. Lucas turned sharply, his voice slicing through the air. "Martha, do you have any idea how much that vase cost?" She stammered an apology, already kneeling to pick up the shards. "I'm so sorry, sir. It was an accident. You'll what?" he interrupted. "Pay for it? With what, your next 10 paychecks?" The other employees froze. Martha's cheeks burned. Lucas sighed dramatically and shook his head. "You've been slow lately. Maybe this job is getting too hard for someone your age. And your size." The words landed like a slap. She wanted to disappear. Instead, she kept her eyes on the floor, whispering, "I understand, sir." By the end of the day, Lucas called her into his office. The conversation lasted less than a minute. "I'm sorry, Martha," he said without looking up from his laptop, "but we need people who can keep up. You can collect your final check on Friday." She stood there in silence, holding back tears, then nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Reed." Even in humiliation, she refused to lose her dignity. That night, on the long bus ride home, the city lights blurred behind the glass. Martha's reflection stared back, tired eyes, trembling lips, but still the faint trace of a smile. She wouldn't let this break her. When she reached home, Ryan was already waiting by the door. "Mom, what happened?" he asked, worry written all over his face. She forced a calm voice. "Nothing I can't handle, sweetheart." He pulled her into a hug, whispering, "We'll figure it out. We always do. And in that tiny apartment, surrounded by love and flickering light, Martha decided that maybe losing her job wasn't the end. Maybe it was the beginning of something she couldn't yet see. The next morning, Martha woke up before dawn. Habit made her reach for her uniform, only to remember there was no reason to wear it anymore. For a moment she sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her hands. They looked older now, rough and cracked but strong. Hands that had carried her through every hard season of her life. She took a deep breath, got up, and started making breakfast for Ryan. Ryan had been up most of the night sketching ideas in his notebook. When Martha placed a cup of coffee beside him, he smiled wearily. "Mom, what if I told you I might have a way to turn things around?" She raised an eyebrow. "Another one of your projects?" He nodded. "Yeah, but this one's different. I'm building an app that helps people like us invest tiny amounts, just a few dollars at a time, so they can actually grow savings. No fancy brokers, no hidden tricks. Real help for real people." Martha listened as he explained the details, his hands moving excitedly as he talked about algorithms and community funding. She didn't understand half of it, but she understood him. His fire, his belief, the way he refused to accept the limits the world had placed on them. "If you believe in it, baby, then I do too," she said, squeezing his hand. That weekend, while cleaning out her purse, she found the small envelope that held her final paycheck. She stared at it for a long time. It wasn't much, barely enough to cover rent and groceries. But something inside her whispered, "Take the risk." That night, she quietly transferred almost every cent she had into Ryan's project. "Consider it our future," she said softly. Weeks turned into months. Ryan coded day and night, sometimes falling asleep at his desk. Martha found temporary cleaning jobs to keep food on the table, all while cheering him on. And slowly, the app began to take off. A few downloads turned into hundreds. Then a popular financial blog wrote about a revolutionary tool for low-income investors. Ryan's email flooded with messages, and small investors started joining in. Martha watched it all unfold with disbelief and joy. She wasn't rich yet, not by a long shot, but for the first time in her life she could feel something shifting. Opportunity was knocking softly at their door. She just didn't know that somewhere across town, Lucas Reed's world was beginning to fall apart. Lucas had always believed money could solve anything. When problems came up, he threw cash at them until they disappeared. But this time, the cracks in his empire were too deep. His latest real estate development, a luxury condo project downtown, was collapsing under debt. Construction delays, lawsuits, angry investors. Everything he'd built on ego was starting to crumble. He spent his days shouting at his team, blaming everyone but himself. The confident smile that once charmed clients was now a mask barely holding together. His assistant quit. His accountant stopped answering calls. And one by one, his partners began to walk away. For the first time, Lucas felt something he hadn't felt in years: fear. Late one night, sitting alone in his office, he stared at a spreadsheet filled with red numbers. His reflection in the glass window looked like a stranger. Tired eyes, loosened tie, the weight of arrogance finally pressing down. He picked up his phone and called every investor he could think of, but no one wanted to touch his sinking ship. "I need new capital," he muttered. "If I don't get it soon, we're finished." Meanwhile, Martha and Ryan's app, now called Grow Together, had exploded across Texas. Local news channels began covering the story of a mother and son team bringing Wall Street to Maine. Ryan was suddenly being invited to panels and startup conferences. Martha never missed a single one. She sat in the audience, proud tears in her eyes as her son spoke about compassion and opportunity. One morning, Ryan came home with surprising news. "Mom, we've been invited to a private investment meeting next week. Some big company wants to partner with us." Martha clapped her hands in delight. "That's amazing." "Which company?" he smiled. Reed Enterprises. The name hit her like a wave. Lucas Reed, the same man who'd humiliated her. For a long time she said nothing. Then slowly she smiled. Well, she said, I guess it's time to see what life's been trying to teach him. The day of the meeting arrived with a heavy Texas heat. Martha dressed carefully, choosing a simple navy blue dress and the same silver earrings she'd worn on Ryan's graduation day. She wasn't nervous, just thoughtful. Life had a strange way of bringing old faces back when you least expected them. The lobby of Reed Enterprises was exactly as she remembered. Tall glass doors, polished floors that mirrored the sky, a place designed to make ordinary people feel small. Ryan walked beside her, confident in his grey suit, his laptop under one arm. "Mom, are you okay?" he asked. She smiled. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just ready." Inside the conference room, Lucas was pacing. His tie was slightly crooked, his voice rough from too many sleepless nights. When the door opened and Martha stepped in, he froze. For a few seconds, he couldn't speak. It was as if every sound in the room vanished, leaving only the echo of his own heartbeat. "Martha," he whispered, disbelief written all over his face. She extended her hand politely. "Good afternoon, Mr. Reed. It's been a while." Ryan set his laptop down and began the presentation, calmly outlining their app's success and growth numbers. Lucas sat there, still trying to piece together what he was seeing. The woman he'd fired without a second thought now represented the investment that could save his company. When Ryan finished, silence filled the room. Then Martha spoke, her voice steady and kind. "I understand you're looking for investors, Mr. Reed. Grow Together is expanding, and we believe in partnerships that create real impact. I think we can help each other." Lucas swallowed hard, forcing a smile. You're one of the investors?" She nodded. "Yes, and a believer that everyone deserves a second chance." He didn't know what hurt more, the memory of his cruelty or the calm grace in her tone. For the first time in years, he felt small in the best possible way. The weeks that followed were unlike anything Lucas had ever experienced. Negotiations went smoothly. Not because Martha was lenient, but because she was fair. She didn't humiliate him, didn't remind him of that day in the mansion. Instead, she focused on the work, asking smart questions, suggesting solutions that actually helped his struggling company. Ryan admired his mother even more. "You could have crushed him," he said one evening as they reviewed documents together. Martha smiled softly. "Revenge doesn't build anything, baby. Only kindness does. And maybe, if he learns from this, it was all worth it." Under the new partnership, Reed Enterprises stabilized. Martha insisted on ethical policies and fair wages for staff. Lucas, humbled, listened. He started showing up early, talking to employees by name, asking about their families. For the first time, he understood what leadership really meant. One afternoon, after a long board meeting, Lucas approached Martha privately. "I need to say this," he began, his voice breaking. "I was wrong about you, about everything. You were the strongest person in that house, and I was too blind to see it." Martha looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Reed. Just promise me you'll treat the next person who works for you with the respect they deserve." He met her eyes and said quietly, "You have my word." Months later, Martha and Ryan launched the Jones Foundation, a program offering financial education and small grants for single mothers trying to start new lives. When reporters asked how it began, Ryan always said, "Because my mom once chose faith over bitterness." And somewhere in the crowd, Lucas Reed would sometimes stand in silence, applauding the woman who taught him what real success looks like. A full year later, the rhythm of Martha's life had slowed to something peaceful. On a bright spring morning, she took the same city bus she once rode in tears. The route hadn't changed. Same cracked sidewalks, same corner store. But everything inside her had. She stepped off near her old stop, the one where she used to rest after 12-hour shifts, and saw a young woman wiping tables outside a cafe. The girl looked exhausted but determined. Martha smiled, walked over, and slipped a small envelope into her hand. "A little help from someone who's been there," she said. Inside was a grant letter from the Jones Foundation. The girl's eyes filled with tears as she whispered, "Thank you." That afternoon, back home, Martha brewed tea and watched Ryan on television giving an interview about the Foundation's new expansion. He spoke with the same calm confidence that had once belonged only to her dreams. "Everything I know about perseverance," he told the reporter, "I learned from my mom." Martha laughed softly, brushing a tear from her cheek. The apartment was bigger now, brighter, yet she still kept her old cleaning cloth folded in a drawer, a reminder of where Faith had started. Across town, Lucas Reed stood by his office window, a stack of charity proposals on his desk. He had quietly become one of the Foundation's largest donors, though he never asked for credit. As he watched the sunset spill over the skyline, he thought of Martha and Ryan and the lessons that had reshaped his life. "Some debts," he murmured to himself, "you repay with gratitude, not money." Then he smiled, a genuine, humble smile, and went back to work. That evening, as dusk turned the city gold, Martha sat on her porch with Ryan beside her. Fireflies drifted through the air, and a warm wind carried the scent of rain. "You ever think about how far we've come?" Ryan asked. She nodded. "Every day. But I still believe the best part isn't what we built. It's who we became doing it." He leaned his head on her shoulder, and for a long while they just watched the world glow. And as the screen would fade to black, the narrator's voice would say, "Never underestimate the quiet ones. The people the world overlooks often carry the strength to change everything. What others see as weakness might just be the kind of power that rebuilds lives, heals hearts, and teaches grace."